Well, hello, my friend, and welcome back to this podcast. I'm truly grateful that you are sticking with me and just clicking that play button and continuing to tune in and join me in this experience that I've taken on since the beginning of the year. To give you a little bit of background knowledge, this whole shift began December 19th of 2025. And so that is when the decision was made. That is when all this panic began. And this is when everything has started to go through. And then with the holidays passing through, I finally found some time to recollect and get this all started, prep this out, get everything ready. And now you're here with me as I'm rolling this out in 2026. But welcome back. Welcome back. I'm glad to have you with me. And just always know that I'm grateful and appreciative that you are here. So today's episode is one that I've kind of been wanting to record for quite some time because it does address something that quietly confuses a lot of people who tend to do this path, right? It kind of gets them in a little bit of confusion here. So I titled this episode, Positive Thinking Isn't the Problem. All right, let me start off real quickly by saying, especially if you've done mindset work, if you've done manifestation work, or you've done a lot of personal development for years, this episode that I'm going to do right now with you here is not to dismiss any of that, okay? This episode is here to clarify some important things that often get missed. Okay, so when we're looking at that positive thinking, we're gonna get some clarity about some things that are often missed, and when we do that work. So after choosing a purpose, or after doing the inner work, or after affirming, visualizing, or believing, right? Um, a lot of people will reach a quiet breaking point and then they'll ask themselves this question: if my mindset is so positive, why does this still feel so hard? Okay. And honestly, that has been something that I have in my own journey. If I go and have this positive mindset every day, I always choose an attitude of gratitude. Why does this feel like it's so difficult? And usually, the question will come with some type of guilt. Because if positive thinking is supposed to work, then discomfort must mean we're doing something wrong, right? If you're saying, I have an attitude of gratitude, I am positive, then I'm doing something wrong because it's just not working, right? But that's the assumption is where things start to unravel. This is where we start to really dive in and what we find out, okay? Positive thinking on its own is not harmful. Let me say that again. Positive thinking on its own is not harmful. The problem is how often it is used as a way to override reality instead of integrate it, right? So sometimes we try to overuse positive thinking to override the reality that we're living right now instead of integrating positive thinking into our process. So some things that we're taught like just think positive. I've heard people tell me that, and I've told a lot of people that. I have don't force the fear or don't focus on the fear, right? If you were aligned, you wouldn't feel this way, right? We've heard this from many people. We've heard this from a lot of people, and I'm guilty of telling people this. And the thing about it is I'm not feeling it, right? Sometimes I can just share with you what it is, but then if you ask me, I probably wouldn't be able to answer the question to you because I'm not feeling it or it's not working for me. But those messages unintentionally teach us to distrust our own nervous system. Understand that we've been talking about the nervous system, and this is something big that I'm starting to learn because my theme for 2026 is to live as evidence. That is my theme, to live as evidence. So that's why this podcast exists. This is why we're going to be talking about things because I'm finally starting to learn a little bit about my nervous system. Ever since my big shift in December of 19 of 2025, my nervous system has been so active that it is absolutely crazy because there's different components that are at place right now, right? And so they're real signals that I'm getting from my nervous system that is telling me, sometimes the real signals into something to suppress instead of understand. And I've always suppressed my feelings. I've always suppressed the emotions I go through. And now what I'm starting to do is through this entire process, I'm starting to understand and learn them. I'm starting to understand the fear. I'm starting to understand the panic, right? I'm not suppressing it. And I used to, and that used to bottle up so much that there would be times that I'd break out crying in the shower out of nowhere. Just I'd start crying. I'd feel this emotional burst and I would just start crying and shedding the emotion. And then finally it's gone. My puffy eyes, I come out of the shower. And sometimes people are like, why are your eyes so red? It's like, oh, it's because the chlorine in the water got to me. In reality, that's a lie. I was crying in the shower. Okay, I'll be honest. I was crying in the shower. And because I was suppressing those signals from the nervous system instead of really truly understanding them. So here's the truth that most people don't hear. Okay? Positive thinking works best when your identity, environment, and your nervous system are all in alignment. Let me say that again. Positive thinking works best when your identity, who you are, who are you becoming, the environment, who are you surrounding yourself with, what does your environment look like, and your nervous system, they are all in alignment. But the problem is during a transition, when you make that purpose over a paycheck, right? Which is what I'm doing right now, purpose over a paycheck. Those systems are not even close to being in alignment yet. Notice I said yet. Those three things, identity, environment, and my nervous systems. Right now, because of the shift that I'm making from purpose to paycheck, right? From purpose over paycheck, my systems are not aligned. So when I try to tell myself to think positive over a destabilized nervous system, my body doesn't feel that support. My body's like, yeah, what are you talking about? Right? What are you talking about? And it feels dismissed. And dismissed fear doesn't disappear. It only intensifies. That was like the biggest thing I started to notice is that if I just try to dismiss it, it doesn't go away, friends. It gets even stronger, right? Because what I'm doing, instead of understanding it, naming it, I'm giving it more power by trying to dismiss it and suppress it. Instead of tackling it and saying, all right, let's go. Let's understand each other. So this has become kind of like the real issue. Many people are trying to create a new life with their old identity structure. They're trying to do what they did in their past and create this new identity with old past behaviors. Stop and pause and think of that for a bit. Trying to create something new with your old identity patterns or your old identity structure. They say, I believe in abundance, but their identity is still unsafe. They're scared, they're fearful, they're worried, right? They say, I believe in abundance, but yet their identity is still unsafe. They visualize this freedom, but they're still operating from survival, right? They say, oh, I visualize the freedom, this is what it is, but in all honesty, they're still operating from survival. So what happens is that gap creates the tension. That gap creates the tension. Not because belief is wrong, but because the identity that they're creating or becoming has not caught up yet. Okay, let me say that again. The belief is not wrong. It's because their identity hasn't caught up yet. Okay? So it might feel uncomfortable to hear, right? This might be uncomfortable to hear. Sometimes when I think about when I'm writing this and thinking about what I wanted to talk about in this episode, it's uncomfortable for me. I didn't want to hear this. When I started thinking about this, I didn't want to hear this, but this is important. I had to really understand that this was important. Here's the deal. Affirmations can backfire when they contradict lived experiences. Don't get me wrong, affirmations are great, but sometimes the body will not believe an affirmation. And affirmations can backfire quickly when they contradict the lived experience. So if I turn around and say, I am financially secured, but my nervous system doesn't believe it yet, my body responds with resistance. And that has been something in the last couple of days that I have actually felt and experienced. Again, my theme for the year, living as evidence. So if I tell myself I am financially secured, but my nervous system is not believing this at all, my body will respond with resistance. And then the resistance isn't failure, it's telling me feedback. It's my system saying, we need integration, not insistence. You need to integrate this, not insistence, Troy. Okay? So, what supports real change isn't louder belief, it's the embodiment. Okay? What supports real change isn't the louder belief, it is the embodiment. These small actions that reinforced the safety, the consistent behaviors that align with the future identity, and gentle honesty about where you actually are. That is what's going to help you with this embodiment, okay? With this embodiment. Positive thinking doesn't replace the regulation, friend. Okay? Positive thinking does not replace the regulation, it builds upon it. And when regulation comes first, when you start to regulate it, belief becomes believable. Remember, we're trying to integrate. We're not trying to make it disappear. We're not trying to suppress it. We're not trying to avoid it. We're trying to integrate it. So when that regulation comes first, when we start to regulate this, our belief becomes believable. So instead of asking yourself, how do I think more positively? A better question that you can ask yourself is, what version of me is learning to exist right now? That's a really good question. What version of me is learning to exist right now? Becoming happens through repetition, not pressure. The body learns by repetition. So through showing up calmly, staying present, allowing growth to be gradual, this is how you're going to get that shift for that new identity. Okay? Showing up calmly, staying present, and allowing growth to be gradual. This is how that identity actually shifts. So if you're listening to this, and I hope you didn't feel discouraged, but if you did, because positivity doesn't fix everything, friend, I want you to hear this clearly. You haven't failed, or you didn't fail the process. Right now, the process is incomplete. You do not need to abandon belief. You need to anchor it into the reality. And then when it's all grounded, when this belief is grounded, it will become powerful again. It's kind of like a bit of a reset. Positive thinking isn't about denying a fear. Positive thinking is about trusting yourself with fear. It's about saying, I can honestly feel this and still move forward. Maybe I don't need to rush my becoming. I am allowed to integrate. Those kind of things that you're thinking or saying to yourself, That's real optimism. That is the real optimism. So, in our next episode, we're going to talk about the space between purpose and paycheck. We're also going to talk about how to live there without feeling this sense of self-betrayal or panic. But I want you to do something. If this episode resonated with you, I highly encourage you to click that follow button. Follow this podcast and stay with me on this journey, because we're only just started, friend. We're only beginning. And I want you to remember, you don't need stronger thoughts. You need a safer relationship with yourself. All right? You don't need stronger thoughts. You just need a safer relationship with yourself. Until then, friend, we'll talk soon.